Today is October 23rd, 2020. My name is Ashley Sanchez, and I'm interviewing Bianca for the Latino Oral History Project / Voces of a Pandemic project at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. This project is in partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Bianca, that this interview will be placed in the Northern Illinois libraries and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. If there is anything that you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something that you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree, after each one. There are several questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. The Center for Latino and Latin American Studies wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation at the Northern Illinois University libraries. Northern Illinois University libraries will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. So for the first question, do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Northern Illinois University libraries?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant Northern Illinois University libraries right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree to allow Northern Illinois University libraries to post the interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I do.
Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voices of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin before Voces sends it to the Benson Library and the NIU libraries. We would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members, so that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible to the Benson Library and NIU libraries. So for my following question, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson and NIU libraries?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. My last question. On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
No, I do not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's the preamble. So let me pull up my questions. So the purpose of this interview is just to understand how Latinos have been impacted in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, like your name, your age, how you identify, and your job overview?
Sure. So my name is Bianca Loya. I'm currently 25 years old. I recently graduated from the University of Northern Iowa in May of 2020, and I started my first year of teaching. Elementary education was my degree that I received, and it's my first year of teaching during a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that must be interesting. All right. How did you first learn about COVID-19?
So I think I first learned about it through the news and just through work as well. So at the time I was completing my student teaching, and on the weekends I was working at a gas station. And so we obviously had a corporate talk to us about, keeping sanitizing, masks, and like protocol safety. I had heard about it like here and there before, but nothing, it was nothing really on my radar until, my work kind of brought it up more to my attention and we had a meeting about it. So that's kind of how I learned more.
Hmm. And when you talk about the news, like what kind of news were you listening to? Like on your phone, on the radio, on the TV?
Mainly like on my phone or from things I would hear, like um, most of my like news and media comes from like Facebook or Instagram, or family members. Like my mom loves to watch YouTube, so she'll watch YouTube and then tell me about stuff that's happening that I have no idea about. So that's
Hmm.
kind of my way of getting news.
Hmm. And what was your initial reaction to the information about COVID?
I think initially at first I was a little bit like confused by it. I was kind of receiving mixed messages about the seriousness of it. And then during that time, I was transitioning to my second student teaching placement. And there was concerns about it as far as like school goes and stuff like that. And then shortly after, um, I was in my second placement for about a week, and then they shut down the school. So then I was just pretty much stuck at home, and the only thing I could do was, look at my computer and read the news and kind of be a little bit more informed. When I started reading more about it, it did kind of worry me just because at the time I was living with my parents, so they fall in the category of higher risk. Um, so I just kind of stayed at my house for a
Hmm.
long time.
Hmm. And when you talk about worries, like what worries came to your mind, or what
Um,
worries were brought up?
I didn't really have many personal worries, being a healthy, young, 25-year-old girl. Um, I didn't have many personal worries. They were more worries for those around me and my community. So, like, obviously, like my parents, older relatives, older friends, people with like pre existing conditions. Were definitely concerns of mine because I didn't want to be someone who got COVID and then expose them, causing them to be sick or,
Hmm.
get the worst end of it.
Yeah. And at what point did you realize that this was serious?
I think it kind of like became a little bit more serious. So I started my second student teaching placement. We went on spring break. They announced it wasn't going to, I wasn't going to, they were closing the schools. So the schools closing was pretty serious. Um, and then when they canceled my graduation ceremony, that's kind of when it really hit. Um,
Hmm.
and, like the schools were closing down. I got let go from my job as well. Um, and then I was just pretty much stuck at home. So during that time when everything was just, getting canceled or not happening anymore, or, the loss of the job, everything came in at once. So I think that's when it really was like, okay, this is serious. Like, this is really something that's happening in the world right now.
Hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned that you've like lost your job and that graduation was canceled and that your student teaching placement was temporarily like stopped. But can
Mhm.
you tell me other ways or just expand on those examples you gave on how COVID-19 impacted you personally?
Um, Yeah, I mean, obviously, like missing out on graduation ceremony, not only being first generation Mexican American, but also a first generation college student, that was a pretty big hit for me. I remember when they announced it, I talked to my dad and I was crying and I was like, this was my big moment and it's canceled. And then when they let me go from my job, which I was working only on the weekends, but
Mm-hmm.
it was still something to help me get by. I was like, okay, like, now what am I going to do money wise? Like, how am I going to, pay for my bills and, carry on with everything. And then when they started shutting down, like, well, the schools were shut down. So um, I ended my student teaching. We did an alternative learning method, which was just doing a research paper. So that was kind of, not what I was expecting. And then once, like, restaurants were closing and everything was just closing, and um, I think the biggest effect was probably just like the mental effect it had, because I was just stuck at home. Obviously being someone who lived with my parents at that time, I didn't want to risk anything being exposed. And so I think a lot of it affected like my mental state. I know, like, when I was stuck at home, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing right now? I don't have anything going on. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go. I recall going to like the grocery stores because I saw people on social media like showing pictures of empty shelves at Walmart, empty shelves at all the stores. Like, people were going crazy. Like, there's no toilet paper anywhere. There's no hand sanitizer, no this, no that. And um, I didn't go out to the stores for quite a while, but then when I eventually did and saw for myself, like, okay, the shelves are actually empty and there actually is no, toilet paper, no this, no that. Um, that kind of sunk in a little bit more as well, and it almost like reminded me of a movie. Like, I felt like this is so unreal. Like, is it, I'm reading about it on my phone and I'm hearing about it, and now I'm out in the world at the store and it's true. Like, it's really happening. So it was kind of like a shocking moment. Like, I think when I was locked in my house, I just kind of played it off as like, oh, like, a couple months it'll be done and it's not really real. But um, it definitely, I would say, affected like my mental state a lot, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned that it impacted like your mental state, what did you go to like for coping? Like, or how did you cope with like these stressors?
Um, well, like I said, at the time I was living with my parents. Um, their work was shut down as well. And it was pretty much me, my parents, my three brothers, and one of my brother had his girlfriend living with us at the time. Um, so like after, like, they announced that school wasn't going back during spring break, and I was like, okay. I remember being asked like, hey, are you worried? And I was like, no, like, I'm on spring break, I'll worry about it next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I got, just like a bunch of coloring books, movies, snacks, a bunch of wine, game cards, and I was like, oh yeah, like, it'll be fine. Like, we'll go back to school and it'll be fine. Like, things will be okay. This is nothing, no big deal. So I was kind of just like in the denial stage of it. And um like, I mean, the first couple weeks it wasn't too bad. I had been student teaching, I'd been working on the weekends, I was like constantly busy, and then all of a sudden, like, everything just stopped, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I can relax, I can enjoy, catch up on TV. um and then I think by like week 3 I was like, okay, I'm losing it.
Mm-hmm.
You can only watch TV for so long, take naps for so long. And this was before they said you could go on walks, and be outside. So um, I had just been inside with my entire family. We played a lot of Uno. Um, I did lots of coloring, reading, just things to try and keep me busy. But it did, like, eventually, after a while, I'm kind of a busybody myself. After a while, it was just like, okay, this is um, this is getting boring. Like, I want to get back to doing what I was doing. And thankfully, my dad does some home remodeling. So he had a house that was being repainted. So that kind of got me out, helping him with work. I cleaned a lot. Then when they said we could go outside, I was going on trails, biking, just doing outdoors activities as much as I possibly could to try and, have some sense of normalness or some form of like schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so you mentioned that you were at home with your family. Can you tell me how COVID has impacted your family members? Like, for example, starting with your mom.
Yeah, of course. So both my parents actually work as custodians at an elementary school. So when the elementary school got shut down, obviously, like they did have them working there for a little bit, but sorry, but eventually, they weren't working anymore. They were at home. Um, my mom was fine with it. She's like, I'm still getting paid, and I get to spend time with my kids now. Growing up, she worked a lot at a factory, and so she was always gone. So we kind of got a little bit more family time, which she appreciated. Now for my dad, who also does um, the custodian work, he's more of a busybody like myself, and he's like, yeah, I can't be here. And so he'd have like projects like that, the house I mentioned that I helped him paint, or just doing odd jobs here and there. And even though me and my siblings, we all voiced the concern of, he has diabetes, so he's more at risk, and just his age range, he's in his 50s. We all were concerned about him, but I mean, thankfully, so far since COVID has started, he hasn't been sick. He hasn't had any, anything come up. So I think we're pretty fortunate in that way.
Mm-hmm. And what about your brothers?
So I have a brother who is 23, and he was attending the University of Northern Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so his classes got shut down and switched over to virtual. Um, and then I have a brother who is 21, and he works in HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and cooling. And the company he was working for at the time, they do like both commercial and residential. So he was kind of, my parents were kind of worried about him just because, he's going into commercial buildings. So like, big buildings full of people, or when he goes into residential homes, like you don't know. And he was obviously concerned as well, living at home and with having our parents, they didn't want them to get it. But he continued working. His work never stopped. He had work the whole time. So that was good. Um, and then his live-in girlfriend, she was also a teacher, and so her school got shut down, and she was kind of in the same boat as me, where we were just at home doing nothing, playing Uno, coloring, having wine, going on walks. And then my youngest brother is 17. It was his junior year of high school. Everything got canceled for him as well. He was on the football team, so that was kind of taken away. um, and he didn't get to, experience prom or anything like that, or different events high school junior kids get to do. And I think it was pretty tough on him as well, just because he couldn't have his friends over, or he couldn't go to his friends, or couldn't be social. this was when the gyms were closed. He liked to go, to the gyms, play basketball. So I think it affected him as well, just, missing out on that. And, being 17, like being stuck at home is not fun. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, so none of like your immediate family or yourself got sick in the beginning of the pandemic?
No, not any of us had gotten sick. Now, before the pandemic did hit, my 23-year-old brother was in Texas for spring break. So he was down in Texas for spring break, and that's kind of like when the COVID news like really was hitting my family. Like during spring break was when everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is, schools are closing, like states were starting to, do stuff." Like this was when it really was kind of happening. And he was down in Texas. And when he came back, he said like he was experiencing like a hard time breathing for a couple weeks. But he never like developed any real like extreme true like COVID cases, or like, the fever and cough and everything. He just said he was having trouble breathing. Went to the doctor. Nothing was wrong really. um, but besides that, we haven't really had any scares when it first started. Um, Now, I know I canceled our meeting last week, and that was because I got sick.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have COVID, thankfully, but I was asked to leave the school. Um, and then I was tested, came back negative, ended up just being an ear infection, thankfully. But yeah, so far everyone's been healthy.
That's good. Yeah, that's good to hear. And well, do you know anyone who's been impacted by COVID? Like any of your family members here in Iowa or in the United States or outside of the United States?
So yeah, so I have an uncle who works at the Tyson plant, and I know that the Tyson in, I believe it's Muscatine. I know like they had a bunch of like cases pop up, and my dad was obviously worried because that's his brother. Um, I know just like I have family members in Texas that experienced like job loss. None of them have experienced being sick. Most of it has been like either job loss or temporarily laid off, or just um, just like mental effects of the pandemic, not actual illness, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is good to hear. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted our communities. So can you tell me a little bit, in your opinion, how has COVID-19 impacted the Latino community in Iowa?
Um, well, I think it's impacted the community just for the simple fact that I recall when, the news kept talking about, I went to UNI, which is up in Cedar Falls, pretty close to Waterloo, and I know they have a Tyson meat packing plant that was heavily just full of cases. And then, anytime you're working in a factory setting like meat packing, everyone is so close. And there was just like a lot of cases. And I know there's other factories that aren't necessarily meat packing that, had a bunch of cases pop up. And like even in West Liberty, they have a lot. They have the West Liberty Foods plant there, and I know that they had issues with the pandemic. Um, Now, in regards to how that relates to the Hispanic community, most people that work in that type of job are Hispanic. They tend to be Hispanic. I know a lot of people that work at West Liberty Foods. I know people that work at Tyson's. My uncle, my goddaughter's parents. I know, cousins, family members, people from the community that are working in those areas. And I think just the fact that that's the population that works those jobs. They don't have the option of working at home. They don't have, you know, the jobs that require a degree or the jobs in an office where, you know, you could just easily work at home and not have to worry about COVID. Um, and then adding in the fact of like, you know, if they're legal or not legal, if they're able to access healthcare or not. Um, I think all those components play a role in how it's affected the Latino community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Can you tell me a little bit of how is going out in the world during COVID-19 different from pre-COVID?
Um, I mean, everything's different. You just have to like remember a lot, remember like sometimes I'm like, how was things before? Or I'll think of a scenario of, you know, where I had done something pre-COVID and then I'm like, okay, COVID now that would not be okay. You know, so a lot of places are requiring, you know, some face covering. So that's really different. Just having to remember to always, I always keep a mask, extra masks in my car, one in my bag. I, you know, have to remember to carry that around with me. Um, you know, keeping social distance, um, which is kind of tough, you know, and then avoiding visits to, you know, people who are at higher risk. So I know like one of my coworkers was like, I haven't seen my mom in so long because, you know, I don't want to affect her. Um, and um, Here in Iowa, I saw a lot of, you know, we're in this together signs. Everyone put like hearts on their windows. Everyone, you know, you see these commercials about staying apart but still together. Um, so I think that was just like really pushed. And I can see like, I know for me, just like the empathy of I don't want to get someone else sick. So I'm going to be, you know, respectful and wear a mask in public, wash my hands, carry sanitizer around, and, you know, do my part. And I think that's the mentality of most people in Iowa. And I have come across some people that are like, this is a hoax. It's not real. I refuse to, you know, wear a mask or care. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah.
Yeah. And how, if at all, has COVID impacted your ability to gather with family and friends, like for important events?
Yeah, I mean, like my youngest sibling turned 17 in April. So this was during COVID time. And like I said, like he couldn't have his friends over. He like just, um, it was just like the family at the house and we just kind of put something together really. It's been hard, but I'm really thankful for technology because I think it's helped with staying connected, like the fact that we can, you know, Zoom and be in different places or FaceTime or, you know, call or text, whatever. Um, that's been, I'd say, a blessing and something that like maybe other pandemics in the past haven't had. Like we can still talk to each other, which is nice. And then, um, yeah, so like, I don't know how our Thanksgiving is going to be. Like, are we all still going to try to get together or are, you know, like Christmases, usually these are pretty big events. Like my family will all gather and make tamales and, you know, it's like a family event and I'm not sure we can do that. One of my cousins went off to the National Guard, so we threw him a small goodbye party. He did invite some of his friends, and we were COVID friendly. Everyone sanitized before coming in. Everyone had a mask. You know, we kind of stayed socially distant as best as possible, and it was just so weird having this little COVID party, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely something new.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem like something very interesting to experience. But who do you interact with and why them? Like in
Um,
person?
like as far as my daily life goes, or
Yeah.
um, well, as far as my like daily life now or before.
Well, I guess now during COVID, like now in the pandemic, like who do you interact with in person?
Okay.
Eh,
Um, so who I interact with would be my family, my immediate family, mom, dad, siblings. Um, other people I would interact with would be like my coworkers. So I work at an elementary school, um, and so I interact with my coworkers and the kids that I teach. And then I interact with my significant other. And besides that, not really anyone else. Like I'll go to the store, mask everything, just kind of go in, get what I need, come home. I don't do many like visits to people like I would have, can't really invite people over or whatnot. Which again goes with the, technology. Like if I want to talk to my friend, I pick up my phone, I FaceTime, we talk on FaceTime, and it's like we're hanging out. So,
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting, right? Okay, so that I want to talk a little bit more about how your education, like your college experience and your job have been impacted by COVID. So can you tell me how it was going into work before the COVID-19 crisis?
um, before going into work, so again, I work at an elementary school. It was a little overwhelming coming in as a first year teacher. Um, our district came out with, like a COVID plan, a safety plan of, this is how it's going to be like. And so there was a lot of questions as to what would school look like? Um, what would it be like? Um, so at first, I mean, I was scared. I was kind of scared. And I was still living at home, so I was scared, of getting it or, giving it to the kids or giving it to my parents. Um, and the plan that the school came up with, so like all the staff, teachers, and students have to have a face covering at all times, whether it's a mask, a shield, or both. I know some people that do both. Um, they have established, social distancing. Um, our class sizes have been reduced significantly, so I don't have a full class of, 28 kids. And they have a hybrid model where we have two groups and they alternate every week of who comes to school, who doesn't. Um, we have like we sanitize between students. I mean, I have the kids wipe down their desk with sanitizing wipes, and they really enjoy it. Actually, like they love cleaning their desks, and they'll clean their chair, and they show me the dirty wipe, and they're like, "Look at all we cleaned up," and they kind of like enjoy it. I get not enjoy it, but they're pretty fast at getting it. And I teach first grade, so it's kind of nice. I know some of the older kids had trouble at first adjusting because they were at normal school longer, but these first graders were pulled out of kindergarten, halfway through, and then we're at home. So, you know, all these new rules to them don't seem so weird because they didn't really experience normal school for that long anyways. So the fact that they've adapted to wearing the mask, cleaning between subjects, and walking socially distant, not sharing stuff, um, staying in their designated area, just things like that. I'm very impressed by their ability of adapting and adjusting to those new rules that we have.
Hmm. Yeah, that is interesting that they're able to adapt so quickly. But what type of protocols do you have to follow when you enter the school?
So as far as when I enter the school, mask, the teacher's lounge is completely shut down. We can't really gather, and if we do gather, we need to be 6 feet apart, which can make it difficult when we're trying to have like team meetings and we're trying to collaborate or share data or make plans for what's to come. Um, the hallways have been kind of divided, so it's like a two-way street, which way you can go. Um, all of our water fountains have been closed off, so the kids can bring their water bottles and refill them. Otherwise, we don't have water fountains available. Um, our lunchroom is has like plexiglass dividing the kids, and they go by grade, and they kind of have designated areas where they sit. Um, for our recess time, they've divided up the playground into 5 different sections, and then we rotate sections. Um, we sanitize like the balls and all that stuff. The kids sanitize before and after. I mean, I'm sanitizing my hands all the time. They're sanitizing all the time, and spraying everything down, cleaning up. Um, and then, um, I mean, as far as I go, just having my mask on is the major one. Socially distance, sanitizing, washing hands. Um, I mainly stay in my room, honestly. We can't really, have the kids mingling or, going into different rooms. So, yeah, it does make it hard on the collaborating part and just like the school, the community, like I'm new, so it's kind of hard to get to know the other teachers if I can't really interact with them much.
Hmm. Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit of how COVID-19 has changed the way you teach and the way you manage your classes?
Yeah, so it's definitely changed the way I teach. It's harder because first grade, like they really, want to have that social aspect, and kids in that age need social interaction. So it's kind of hard because, like, I can't really have them work in groups, since they have to remain separated. Um, and then I think, like sometimes they do get a little fussy with like, okay, can we have a mask break? Can we have a mask break? And it's understandable. I feel the same way too. Like I want a mask break. It's hard, to project my voice. Kids at that age are really visual, so if they can't see my expressions, it's kind of hard. And then when we're trying to learn like phonics, because we're working on reading, um, they need to see like my how I'm making the sounds. So that's been a challenge as well. And I do alternate between wearing a mask and wearing a shield, and like trying to do the best with that. And then I think it's also affected just like, um, since I have alternating groups, one group is like, you know, gets along a little better. The other group is, a little bit more rowdy. And it's hard because I'll teach one group and then the next group comes in. And then on Monday, I'm like, why don't you guys know this? Didn't I teach you this last week? And they're like, no, that was group A. We're group B. You have not taught us that. So
Hmm.
it's hard to manage the different groups. And then since I do dual language, I actually have 4 groups of kids plus my online kids. So it's management wise, it's been a little difficult, keeping track of like, okay, this group, we got through this week. they're going to do this stuff at home. And then there's the part of like, are they getting it when they're at home? Are they able to do it at home when they come back on Monday? Like, will they understand what I'm talking about? Because we're just kind of like going through the curriculum and we're just, I guess, hoping that they're getting it. Um, and that's kind of like the what the school has said. I personally feel like we should be, um, you know, not expecting like, if I'm sending math home and the parents are trying to do it and they don't get it, and then the kid comes back and we're already, on the next week of math, well, they're behind. So I'm seeing a lot of kids that are performing at lower levels and they have come in as, you know, pretty much kindergarten level. So it's been difficult um, trying to teach first grade level content to kindergarten level kids isn't really working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So can you talk to me a little bit more about your student experiences and have you, well, I guess let me rephrase. Can you tell me a little bit more on how the new protocols put in place have impacted the way your students learn?
Um, I mean, I think it's definitely impacted the way they learn because, like, for my hybrid model kids, they come in for a week, so Monday through Friday, they have me there. Um, and then the next week, they are at home. And so, what our school does, um, at the beginning of the school, our principal announced that we did not have our Chromebooks. So what we've been doing in place of the Chromebooks has been sending paper packets home. So these paper packets for my portion of my classroom includes Spanish math and Spanish reading, writing, all the language arts in Spanish, and social studies. So I send these packets home with like a checklist of, do this Monday, do this Tuesday. Now, when they're at home, I don't know what they're doing. When they're at home, I don't know if their, parents are helping them. If I have some kids that come back after being at home for a week, the expectation is that they bring back all their work on the Monday they're back at school. And I have kids that come back with absolutely nothing done, or I have kids that come back with like the easy sheets that, maybe you just have to color or cut and glue. Um, and then on the other hand, I have some kids, I just hosted parent teacher conference last night, and I have some kids whose parents are like, yeah, my child has a tutor that comes and helps them. So I don't really know how they're doing because they have a tutor. And then on the other spectrum, I have kids who parents are struggling. The kids are at daycare all day. They come home from work at 6 o'clock. It's difficult to, after both family members working, they can't really, have the kids sit down and do the work. And so it's not getting done. Or since my content and material is in Spanish, for the parents who don't speak Spanish, it's been a little bit of a challenge on them. And I know a lot of them mentioned, like, oh, it takes us, forever because I have to Google Translate and, help my kid out and this and that. So um, it definitely, it definitely is challenge because I can tell like who does things at home and who doesn't does do things at home. And then just like the behavior of, school is so structured and it's so long compared to, you're at home for a week where you're only requiring 45 to 90 minutes a day at home of work. So then you're at home eating when you want, doing your homework when you want, kind of working on it at your pace. And then they come to school. So then I'm seeing some behavior where, they're like, when's lunch? We're hungry, or I'm tired. Like they kind of forget what school is like. They forget that, at this time we do this, at this time we do this, at this time is lunch, at this time is break. So by the time they readjust to, um, back to the school schedule, it's about, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I only have them till Friday, and then they get to go home again for 5 days, which actually is more like Saturday, Sunday. It's actually more like 9 days because they have the weekend plus the 5 days, another weekend, and then they come back Monday. So I think that model is just a lot of time at home, and it's natural for kids that age to kind of forget how to school. In like when I was doing normal school, like the kids would go home Saturday, Sunday, come back Monday and just kind of be like out of it, but then they were able to pick back up. So it's kind of been difficult. And then my online students, I have no idea who they are. I have no clue what they're doing, how they're doing. I just had conferences with them last Thursday, but we aren't allowed to do live videos with them. We're not allowed to, stream any lessons. Um, there's a lot of things put in place by the district that don't allow us to, do a video conference like this with just the child. um, so that's been difficult, and I feel like I lack as a professional teacher because I want my students to know that I care about them. And when I conference with their families, it was more like me asking them how things are going. Like, do you think you'll come back to school because they have the option of switching to hybrid? Um, so it's just been challenging, and then trying to keep up with like my two in-person groups for A week, my two in-person groups for B week, plus my online kids. I have to be 5 people, and it's been challenging as a professional. It's been challenging as like, me just as a person because I'm at school working late. um I feel tired. I feel like, this is a lot of work. And um, then the fact that I'm a first year teacher as well, it gets overwhelming. Now, with those feelings, I'm not saying like I don't like my job or I hate it, but it's definitely been harder at times, um, to feel like, okay, like, yes, I'm appreciated. Yes, like, what I'm doing is, good work. And I mean, that's my hope at the end of the day, that I'm doing good work. And my conferences, like I said, for the most part went pretty well. I had a couple families compliment me on, how well I'm doing, and their kid is really excited. They like my class. They like learning. They like being hybrid. Um, so that reassurance of like, okay, I'm not doing as bad as I think I am, or I'm keeping up, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, kudos to you. It seems like you have a lot on your plate. So everything you just explained to me, I'm like, wow, that
Yeah,
sounds so overwhelming.
yeah,
Um, I do have a couple more questions about education, if you don't mind answering them.
yeah,
But you talk about your students, like them having to be like in person, how they each have like their own designated areas, and how you have to wipe with sanitize and wipe everything down, like how you were mentioning. But can you give me any more examples of like how your students interact in the classroom, like at lunch or in recess? Like, are they able, like like when you think about like being in first grade, it's all about like being close to your friends, you know, being very social. Like
Right.
how is it different now?
So pretty much the kids are the same kids all day. So prior to COVID, um, the biggest thing is the lunchroom and recess. So before they were able to intermingle between the different classes. So there's four fourth grade classes. There's two English only, and then the dual, which is Spanish and English. So before, like, you know, they could see their friend in the other class and sit with them at lunch. Now that's not possible. They have to stay with their group at all times. During recess, they cannot play together. They can only play with their own group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then again, like we don't have the whole class. Like the whole class is not together. Um, so I know like one of my B kids has a friend. They're both in my class, but she's a B kid and she's an A kid and they're best friends, but they're different. They come different weeks. So like, they can't hang out. Um, but one thing I will say about the recess and the groups, um, now for me, like my morning group, I have 6 kids. These 6 kids are just very different, very different. The dynamic actually flows really well. And so then when we're at recess, I'm looking out at these kids and I'm thinking to myself, if this was a normal year and I had all um, 23 of my kids here, I don't think that these 6 kids would ever even talk to each other, play with each other, acknowledge each other. But because of the COVID and because they have to stay in their group, I've just seen like this sense of family and this sense of caring. And every morning we do a social emotional learning lesson. And I ask the kids, like, how are you doing? And we talk about our emotions. And they'll say good, or they'll say how they're doing, and occasionally I'll have someone say, I'm tired or I'm sad. And so I'm like, all right, class, student A is tired and sad, let's send them an air hug, and then we all send an air hug.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of almost like beautiful in a way that these kids that maybe would have never been friends in a normal class are now friends, and we've built this sense of, we're a little family, like it's just me and the 6 of you. And then I think that also allows for more one-on-one because I can focus on each kid a little bit longer, knowing like I don't have a full 23 kids all needing my attention. um, so it's been both good and bad, and enlightening in a way. It's almost like poetic and beautiful to just see them interact. And I think they're getting the socialness. They're in person now. My online kids, I'm not sure if they're having that social aspect at all. Um, but I know my hybrid kids, like I said, I'm very impressed, especially for first grade. These kids are, 6, 7 years old, and they're on board. They really are. Like I'm very impressed by them.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that the school wasn't able to provide MacBooks for the student. I mean, not MacBooks, sorry. They weren't able to provide Chromebooks. How, if at all, has the school helped like the community and the students during COVID-19?
So what was to happen was the school was supposed to get these Chromebooks and they were on back order. In August, we were told we have no idea when we're getting them. Now I know the school obviously is working on this. We just got them in the elementary, so they prioritized, and the high school kids got them first, which makes sense. You know, they're older, they know what they're doing. So the high school kids got them, and then the middle school, and now we're at the elementary school, and they're giving them out by grade. So the last grade that got them was fourth. Next week will be third grade, and then it'll slowly come down to my kids in first grade. I know that they are offering hotspots for families that need, internet connection. And then another resource is the school received a grant. Um, my school is already like a low social economic school, um, but they received a grant that allows them to give all students free lunch until I think next year. So all the kids can have free breakfast, free lunch. Um, and then I know they also provide lunch for like virtual kids. You can order, I'm going to pick up, let's say you have 3 kids at home virtually learning. We're going to pick up 3 school lunches today, which I think is a good program. I know they did that during the summer too, where you could go pick up food for those kids needing food. And then for like the hybrid kids, I know they'll send food with them home. Um, and then with winter coming up, we also have a program where like if you can't afford a coat, we can get you a coat. I know I've personally like spent money, out of my own like want and like kindness, because like my kids didn't have gloves, so I went out and got them all gloves, so when we go outside they're not cold.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean the school does its thing, and then I know some teachers that like a lot of teachers will go out of their way and buy stuff out of their own pocket for their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that's very kind of you guys to do so. All right, I just have a couple more follow-up questions and then I can let you go. But can you tell me a little bit of what do you worry about while you're at school? Like while you're at work?
Um, I mean, so when I canceled our last meeting, I was sick. I got sent home from school. I was experiencing coughing. I lost my voice. I was like, I was very sick. I was not feeling good at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, immediately I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, oh, if I get this, then my teaching partner is going to be affected. The other 2 elementary first grade teachers are going to be affected, the students, and then like the parents, and it's just like a domino effect. So when I'm at school, I really try to like kind of bury that fear, um, and not think about it. My main focus I think about is my students and like how I can serve them and how I can get them to be at the level they need to be at. Um, and then I guess like um, not pandemic related, just my concern is like I want them to um, get where they need to be. And I worry when they're at home, like, is someone helping them? Are they understanding? Is this model truly working? Is it, like what could happen? Um, and then I know I've had my teammates have a couple of like close calls where they're like, oh, my husband was exposed, now we're getting tested, or oh, they all have families, so they're like, oh, my kid this or whatever. So I'll think about that sometimes, but I'd say I try to bury that and just mainly focus on the kids and what I can do for them. And, I think about them when they're at home. And on Friday before they leave to be home for a week, I sing them the song from the movie Coco.
Oh.
remember me. I'll be like, remember me. So they don't forget, like, even though Miss Loya isn't there teaching you, just remember what I taught you and remember that, you're smart and you can do this and, um, things are going to be okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing great your first year.
I'm trying the best I can. I really am.
Mm-hmm.
It has its challenges some days.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like it, but from what you've been telling me, I think you've been doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I do have, sorry, I keep saying I have a couple more questions to wrap up. I just have three more questions and then that's it. So how has now moving? So that was talking a little bit about your educational experiences. I want to talk a little bit more about how Iowa has handled the pandemic and how the federal government has handled the pandemic. So, in your opinion, how has Iowa handled the pandemic?
Um, oh gosh. I think Iowa has, I mean, definitely like the fact that, we're still pretty high with cases has something to say. And our leader, our governor, has not been, um, I don't know if she's not taking it seriously. And I just remember watching like the live stream whenever she talks, my Facebook will pop up a notification on like Kim Reynolds is live, and I click on it, and anytime I click on it, I'm like, it's the same thing. She gets asked a question, she doesn't answer it, and then she just says, we're all in this together. I believe in Iowans. Now, if you know anything about Iowans, I will say Iowa is great. Iowa nice is a thing. Like people here genuinely, we tend to have good people, nice people in Iowa. Now, when she's like, I believe in Iowans, I'm like, although, yes, there's nice people here, not everyone is like wearing a mask, not everyone is doing their part, not everyone, like when places were closed, especially in like Iowa City, like as soon as the bars open up and school came back, like these young kids, which, I don't blame them. Everyone wants to live their life. Everyone wants to go out. I want to go out, but they just are flooding the bars and then it's causing issues. She'll shut down the bars for a little bit and then they're back again. And we're seeing the same thing where people aren't following the rules or doing what they need to do. They're not doing their job to help put a stop to it. Um, and and I mean, there were definitely times when COVID started where I was like, why aren't we shut down? Like, there's other places that have been shut down. Why are we not like completely just shut down? Like we need to all be on the same page and just really work together. But I don't know. I see some things that are like okay, some things that are not okay. I mean, when it comes to school, I know like the Iowa City district was really fighting because they wanted to be full virtual. Um, and then Kim said like, no, you can't be full virtual. You have to have the options of hybrid and virtual. So not allowing the districts to have command of what they decide, I think was not a good move either. I think the district should have the power to decide if they want 100% virtual, if they want hybrid model, if they want both models, if they want to make up their own model. I think giving the communities their right and their choice of how they want to do it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I could go on for days. I think,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I.
yeah, yeah. I agree. But is there anything that you would like to see different in terms of how COVID is being handled in our state?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I do like I'll go out to places like um I know like Iowa City had a like requirement of face masks. Um and I think my biggest issues is I'll see some places that say mask required to enter versus mask suggested to enter. Um So I think, I mean, I would personally like it if every establishment was like it's a requirement and you have to obey it. And I think some people just take it as a joke. Like, I mean, the other day I went to, I think like the gas station, I went in and they had their mask suggested sign and there were people in line just no mask and I always wear mine all the time and I wear it at school so I'm so used to having it on and having extras and just being prepared and there's some people where I'm like this has been happening since March, like how are you not with the program already? um so I think maybe just some more structure as far as that goes and then um yeah, that I think that would just be something that would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
It's just having more like the required versus the suggested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Iowa's done has been doing a great job of handling everything. But in your opinion, how has the federal government handled the pandemic?
Um, I mean, just I don't know, just take a look at it like our leaders, and I think they aren't taking it as serious as it needs to be taken serious. And then, when President Trump was confirmed COVID positive along with his wife, like I was kind of hoping like more people would be like, okay, yeah, this is real. Like our very own leader got this. And I mean, he overcame it and everything. Like he was on the debate last night. But I just, I mean, I just want, in general, I just want it to be taken more seriously. And I would like to see the government helping the people who are suffering, people who are still without a job, people who are still like, struggling. And for example, like my significant other is from Cedar Rapids, and Cedar Rapids was hit with the derecho storm. So not only did Cedar Rapids get hit with COVID pandemic, but then this storm came, took out electricity for 2-3 weeks for people, took out businesses, took out schools, took out internet power, anything you could think of, and just it was just devastation on top of devastation, and the damage will be lasting for years. And I was like, why isn't this being covered? Like, why aren't people like, talking about this? Like, this is, these people already, maybe let's say I live in Cedar Rapids, I lost my job due to COVID, and now I lost everything again because of this storm. And like, where's the help? Like, why aren't these people being helped? And like, there's still people that are unemployed. Like, where's the help for them? Like me myself, like I just graduated from school. Like I'm starting my career. Like I was really hoping that teachers would be compensated for like this is a risk. I take a risk every day. Like our fourth grade team was out because there was a COVID case. Our second grade team was out because of a COVID case. The last number I heard for my district was I think something like 10 cases had happened, the district wide, not just my school in general, but Um,
Mm-hmm.
it, like it's still happening, and I'm like, where's the help for the people that need it? And then also like the cost of the test. I'm fortunate enough to, have insurance, and but there's people that don't can't, get tested, or don't have a way to get to. I know they set up like the Iowa testing stuff, but like if you don't have a way to get there, like I would like to see more assistance. I'd like to see more help for people that are still struggling because of the financial hit that um, COVID has been on people.
Mm-hmm. So that brings up an additional question for me. So you mentioned that there's 10, like roughly around 10 positive cases in your district. How does the district and the school handle positive COVID cases?
So what we do is, so I have to keep track of like what kids are in my room at all times. So we do attendance in the morning and the afternoon, and then we keep a log of like, who's coming into the room. So like the music teacher came in today, and then I have a personal log where I keep track of like, okay, I went to the library to work on this today, and this other teacher was there. And of course we social distance and have our masks on, but um, we're asked to keep logs of like where we are at the building. So if per se, like I had COVID and I was positive, I could look in this log and say, okay, this is who I saw, like this is who is possibly exposed. Um, Now I know they came out with the new information of if you have a mask and the other person has a mask and they have COVID, and then you don't have to worry about it. Our school is still keeping our same policies of, whether I had a mask or didn't have a mask, if me and you were in the same room, like you're going to be quarantined at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the students are also going to be quarantined. So anyone that came in contact with a positive case, um, it would probably be, so like I mentioned, like the fourth grade team was out. So the person that had it, and then the teachers that were exposed, all the students that were exposed. Um, so that's just kind of like how they're doing it. We're out for quarantine time until they came back after I think the 2-week period. So that's how they've been handling it at school, and I think they're like I'd say we're doing a pretty good job for like, I mean, we're a fairly small district. We have, our ELC, which is pre-K and kindergarten, our elementary, which is first through fifth, our middle school, and our high school. For being 4 buildings, I think they've been doing pretty good, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So those were all my questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share with me about your experiences with COVID-19 that I have not asked about?
Um, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the interview. I know I've been I've been nagging you for a while. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, Bianca,
Yeah.
are you
Hopefully,
available today?
yeah, hopefully it was helpful, and got some good stuff there.
Yeah, it was very insightful. Yeah, thank you for sharing your experiences
Yeah, of
as
course.
a teacher in Iowa. Like, it sounds like you have a lot on your plate, so I
Yeah.
hope the rest of the year gets a little easier for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a learning curve. Like it's been hard, and you just have to keep in mind like I'm learning, the kids are learning, we're all trying to figure it out as best as possible, and um just kind of going with the flow. And my first day of school, we all made a first grade wish. We launched some rockets, and
Hmm.
we put a first grade wish on it. And I mean, my first grade wish was I hope we can all go back to normal. And I think that's the hope for everyone. I think, we want to have all the kids at school. We want to be, working again. We want to just have that sense of normal again, and just, never, sometimes I laugh. I open up my glove box and I'm like, never in my 25 years of life did I think I'd be having, bottles of sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, and a packet of face masks in my glove box.
Mm-hmm.
Never in a million years did I ever foresee that happening, or, hearing about cases or deaths, or, school totally changing its structure. Um, but yeah, just kind of keeping the mindset of, we're all learning, we're all growing, and hopefully one day this will just be something in the history books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully. I'm hoping that the US will be able to overcome the pandemic, but I feel like we're gonna be here for a while, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But before I let you go, I just want to ask like if there's any pictures that you're able to send to me.
Oh, yes, I will send those too. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you want
And
that via your email or?
yeah, email is fine. Email or Facebook is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And what would be the best way to connect with other teachers at your school? Should I
Um,
just email other teachers?
for like interviewing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I can get you like a list if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay, perfect. I can do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing the interview. I'm glad we
Yeah,
were able to find the time and make it work.
yeah,
I
me too.
appreciate all your insight.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. It was good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.